Welcome to Reddit Tea Time. My wife and I are both 34 and kid-free. My brother Mac, 28, started dating 30-year-old Heather roughly a year ago, and she came with 3 kids. 12-year-old Anna, who is 100% the problem child. The boys, 6 and 8, are great. Anna, on the other hand, purposely does stuff to piss people off at every turn and is extremely defiant, and her mother lets her get away with it. We own a camp on the lake, and once a year we host a large barbecue and a weekend stay for the entire family. Mac brought Heather and the kids. Anna was a jerk all weekend, picking fights with people, throwing tantrums, hitting, etc. And Heather just stood back saying, "I don't know why she acts like that," rather than doing anything to correct her kid. My wife was getting noticeably more pissed off as the hours progressed, but nothing like yesterday. Yesterday, we were all sitting out on the deck talking and enjoyed a coffee, and Anna was underfoot, per usual. She was told to go play with the other kids several times, and she refused, finding excuses to be involved in the conversation, which included picking up a fly swatter and swatting at flies around all the adults, knocking over our coffee several times. She was also smacking my wife with the swatter repeatedly, saying there were flies on her when there wasn't. My wife at one point looked at Heather and said, "Either get your kid the F out of here or I'm going to lose it." I also spoke to my brother several times about him stepping in. This was following Anna dumping my wife's fresh coffee all over the place, including on her for the second time. Cold coffee. My wife doesn't drink hot coffee. Heather said a clipped, "Anna, go play," and that was it. No follow through. Well, Anna comes right back in and slaps my wife on the forehead with the swatter and says, "Bug, missed him." My wife took her coffee, her third one that she just made, again cold, and flung it at Anna, covering her. Anna immediately starts crying and Heather flips out. So does my brother, saying that my wife was immature and that she's just a kid. My wife calmly puts her cup down and continues conversation like nothing happened, as Anna, Heather, and Mac are all flipping out. But then Heather says, "Do you have anything to effing say for yourself?" And my wife says, "Don't let the door hit you and your demon spawn on the butt on the way out." Some of the adults are saying maybe an apology is warranted and that we're the boneheads for not giving one. I personally don't think so. Edited to add, there were plenty of times my wife specifically told Anna to stop, and she had even taken the fly swatter from her at one point. Anna went and mocked my wife and then grabbed a new swatter while Heather and my brother ignored Anna and what she was doing. Hence why Anna kept doing it. Several times the other adults spoke up to this kid as well. Anne spoke to Heather about stepping up and telling her kid to stop and actually following through. Many steps were taken before it got to this point. No, my wife shouldn't have had to remove herself from the equation when it's our property and everything was on our dime. My brother and his sorry excuse of a mom girlfriend should have corrected the issue from the beginning. 12 is plenty old enough to know right from wrong. Even her brothers don't pull that crap. Just a quick ad, it's not my wife's job to set an example, like some of you are saying. We are kid-free for a reason. Anna and her sorry excuse of a mother were warned several times by my wife, me, and the other adults. Beyond that, it's a them issue. Now for some comments. I would have launched my kid into outer space if she did that to an adult. The fact that her mother tacitly encouraged it by doing nothing to stop this is interesting. When I was a kid, there was a kid at my church who was younger than me. He was about 8 or 9 and had figured out how to pinch people. Really hard. He liked that it made people yelp, and he got to interject himself into situations from behind. His parents would scold him, take him aside, take things away from him. It didn't really matter. They couldn't really stop him. He pinched my mom, who whipped around and grabbed his arm really hard and said right in his face, "If you pinch me again, I'm going to pinch you back, and you are not going to like it. You've been warned." He looked a little disconcerted and looked at his parents, who just looked back at him silently. The next week, he was pinching people again, and he pinched my mom. She grabbed him and pinched the hell out of his arm, really hard, fingernails and all, and she had big, strong hands. He yelped and looked at his parents, who looked at him levelly and said, "She warned you," and turned their back on him. That was it. He stopped. He finally understood that it hurt. But a huge part of it was that his parents didn't defend him. You might think Anna would learn from this, but not if the parents defend her. Not the bonehead. Heather was totally amused watching her mini-me swat their hostess over and over. Not the bonehead. Anna needs to understand life has consequences. Cold coffee is a very small one. Nanny here, and as much as I want to say that your wife should have held her temper, F that dude, not the bonehead. You told the child to stop multiple times. You told the parents to take a hold of their child multiple times. Anyone with effing eyes would see how mad someone would be getting after this continued on. And on top of that, your wife gave a final warning saying, either you get your kid the F out of here or I'm going to lose it. Everyone getting their panties in a twist has obviously never dealt with troubled kids and effective parenting with disciplinary actions. Heather and your brother need to learn how to take care of their demon spawn, and once they understand how awful their child behaves, maybe you guys can rekindle your relationship. My husband and I have a daughter who is 13. I was molested from the time I was 12 up until he accidentally got me pregnant at 15 and I went to live with my aunt by my own father. I have a lot of unresolved trauma, and because of this trauma, I was very on top of changing my daughter. My husband rarely changed a diaper or gave her baths. I was very wary about leaving them alone together, even though my husband never gave me a reason to. I stole a lot from my husband, which is when I agreed to finally go to therapy about 9 years ago. I was in it for a few years. A few days ago, my daughter asked my husband and I if we thought she could get some more adult underwear. She said the girls in the locker room were looking at her weird for her childish underwear. I said no, but my husband thought maybe it was time for her to upgrade her wardrobe. This triggered me, and when my daughter left the room, I asked him why he thought that was okay to buy our daughter adult underwear and not to make our decisions on our daughter's underwear. Don't tell me she should wear more adult underwear, etc. He got upset and said she was in middle school now and he didn't want her to be bullied and that I couldn't start this again. He then said I needed to stop thinking of him as this monster because he's her father, not my dad, and that if these episodes were going to start up again, I need to go back to therapy. I feel as though him knowing my trauma, he shouldn't get so angry and demand I go back to therapy. I have every right to be cautious. Am I the bonehead? Now for some comments. You've labeled your husband as a predator since your daughter was born. I can't imagine how that feels to be in his shoes and to be under constant scrutiny by his own wife, best friend, and partner. Go back to therapy and don't dip out ever again. It's still unresolved and you should probably look into couples therapy as well. Assisting someone with their trigger is one thing. Constantly being regarded as some demon due to triggers is not okay. If you don't think you can work past this and trust him for once in your daughter's life, divorce him for the sake of his own mental health and your daughter's. You're 100% the bonehead. You're not the only victim here. You villainized him his entire daughter's life. Not okay. So, because of your past trauma, your daughter has to be different and made fun of? And your husband can't be a normal dad? You're the bonehead. Go back to therapy. First of all, I'm so sorry for what you went through and the lifelong trauma your father left with you. However, your husband knowing your trauma doesn't mean he should walk on eggshells when interacting with his daughter and make decisions as a parent. And plus, he was only responding to your daughter's very reasonable request. He wasn't doing anything more than that. Even in your post, you know that he didn't do anything wrong. And yet you're still suspicious of him. I think him asking you to go back to therapy makes sense. You're also not considering his feelings into this, it seems. Your accusations hurt him and may hurt your marriage too. I, female 35, moved to the US to be with my spouse, male 40. When I arrived, I had remote work and some savings. Since that work stopped, I dipped in my savings paying for a little expensive for myself and the household. Fast forward to 6 months later, the money ran out. Husband refuses to give money for my personal use. Not for grand expenses, but to buy personal hygiene stuff like sanitary pads, facial wash, shampoo, etc. His reason was that he's providing shelter, food, utilities. What would I feel if that's taken away, said as a joke. I was made to feel he's providing, just not pampering or spoiling. What little funds I get occasionally are from stuff back home I sell online. He earns more than enough for a family of 2. No child support, alimony, debt, or big loans. I know because he doesn't hide his payslip, investment statements, etc. He gave me proof of his assets when we submitted immigration papers. He's just a tightwad. I was expecting access to funds for the household expenses, not everything he has. I asked to make me an extension of his card in the meantime, but got a big no. He buys groceries but tailored for what he likes. During the times I asked for grocery money, he once gave $20 for a week and had the gall to ask for change. Once he gave me $60 and I had to itemize what I bought. The times he brought me to an Asian grocery to buy what I wanted and needed, it ended up with scrutinizing the cart. Those trips felt like I needed to hail him for the grand effort. I'm upset because of the indignity of having literally nothing. Again, not for crazy expenses. There are days when I like a cup of coffee to unwind, a cheap pair of shoes, a new book. I don't even consider them luxury. It's for mental health. I feel bad lying to friends I can't join a simple lunch because I don't have money. He said up to me to find funds if I want to do something like that. He said he knew me as a strong, independent woman. When we met, I was employed. I've been confronting him but end up crying and made to feel it's my fault for not saving enough to cover this period until I can work again. He tells me this each time. He insists it's not as if I'm paying for necessities, rent, electricity, Wi-Fi, cable. He thinks providing the bare minimum is enough. I just tell myself when I can work and earn my own money, I won't feel this bad. He said he's not expecting me to share half when the time comes, but this period of waiting isn't good for me mentally. I feel undignified, not only because of the unmet needs, but feeling there's no we, us in this situation. Asking an allowance as a wife feels what the F already. I'm a partner, not a child. So, am I the bonehead for hating on a spouse who isn't giving me money, or am I just being entitled? I'm in an interracial marriage and I feel I have to make wider leeway for cultural differences, but I also don't want to gaslight myself in this form of financial abuse. Now for some comments. Not the bonehead. In a marriage, you take care of your spouse. You're not asking for much. He's being a jerk. He asked you to move to a country where you can't legally work and won't help you buy shampoo? And he's your husband? Yeah, not the bonehead. Huge red flag. Not the bonehead. This is also financial abuse. Not the bonehead. Not allowing you personal hygiene? That's abusive. Get a job, anything, and start saving money. Leave him. If you can, move back to where you're from. I'm assuming you have family there. There is no way I'd stay the allotted time to get a green card with an abusive narcissist that you are married to. OP replied, not gonna lie, a part of me feels I won't feel this bad if I have my own money, but what if it happens again, right? I was already exposed to the kind of partner he is in this time of crisis, although a personal one. Not the bonehead. This doesn't sound like a marriage. It sounds like he's imported a sex worker and pays in housing and internet. If you take care of the home while he works, you're entitled to everything you've mentioned and more. For cultural reasons, mother-in-law lived like this for a long time until she finally demanded access to the money she earned, which was substantial. Even with no earnings, you're an equal in this household. Is this a cultural thing, or is your husband just a massive bonehead? You're definitely not the bonehead, and are quite calm and gracious. My sister, call her Brooke, 32, has been together with Mark, 32, since freshman year of high school. As far as I, 22, understand it, they didn't want to get married initially because Brooke is vehemently child-free and Mark agrees with her, but they have decided to hold a wedding or commitment ceremony next spring after a lot of years of back and forth. The problem is, I've known Mark since I was a kid. He started coming around the house a lot when he and Brooke were sophomores in high school, so I was 8 or so when I first met him as Brooke's boyfriend, and I have basically hated him the whole time. I've tried to be polite, particularly now that we're all adults, but I just don't want to go to the wedding of my sister and the guy she's always put before her family. As an example, when Brooke and Mark started dating, Brooke went from eating dinner at home with the rest of us every night to going out 2 or 3 nights a week with Mark and his friends. This was against our parents' rules and caused a lot of arguments that negatively impacted both me and our younger sister Jenny, who was barely in kindergarten at the time and didn't understand what was going on. Brooke and our parents started fighting basically every night, and it was incredibly disruptive to our home life. My sister went from being my best friend to a stranger, and Mark was the one encouraging it. The stress of those years was so bad that I had to repeat 4th grade, failed math, and I was bullied really badly for that. I stopped going to school looking nice because there was so much tension in the home that no one was paying attention to whether or not I had clean clothes. Jenny also struggled academically and socially, but I was able to step in and help her more with things like getting dressed and packing her lunch, so she doesn't remember those years as negatively as I do. Of course, as soon as Brooke and Mark graduated, he convinced her to move across the country to go to college. Our parents were really hurt by this, and there were a few years where she didn't come home over Christmas or summers. Eventually, things cooled down when I was in high school and Brooke started making more contact with our family. But Mark would do things like glare at our parents over the dinner table and suddenly declare that it was time for them to go. I don't think I should have to go to the wedding of my sister and this guy that stole her from us, and I'm planning on RSVPing no when the time comes. Our family has been minimally involved in wedding planning, and I'm not in the bridal party or anything like that. They're all friends of Brooks and Mark's from the hospital where they work. Would I be the bonehead? Edit. I'm getting a lot of feedback that Brooke was potentially parentified. If anyone has recommendations for podcasts or books about that, I would appreciate it. I think I need to learn more about her experiences before I decide about the wedding, since we did used to be close and it would be unfortunate to lose the relationship entirely, which is what some commenters think will happen if I skip the wedding. Thank you. Edit 2. Please stop attacking my parents. They have their faults, but they didn't have many resources when we were young. It's important to me to support them now that they're older and can't work, but I also want to support Brooke and understand better now that I have been handling this in a mature way. I'll be apologizing to her and asking for more of her perspective on things from our childhood. I'm going to stop reading now, and I appreciate your help. Thank you. Now for some comments. I think you're being childish and petty over stupid crap. I think it's insane that one of your examples is she wasn't eating at home as often. Frankly, you're blaming your sister for crap you aren't entitled to. You failed math. No one else made you do that. Your parents sound just as immature. Why aren't you blaming them for creating a toxic home life? Why aren't you mad at them? You had to take care of your younger sister. She's their child. The way you talk, it's like you feel ownership over her instead of being an individual. It's weird. It's like, grow up and get over it. Jesus, you're the bonehead. Info. None of the problems you described were Mark's fault. Brooke started having the usual teen feelings of wanting to be more independent and getting invested in her relationship, and that conflicted with your parents' roles. That's not on Mark. You've not described any single action or statement that makes it clear whether Mark is controlling or just objects to your parents trying to control their now adult daughter. So why is your issue specifically with Mark? Or is he just the easy scapegoat for your family not being as comfortably and conflict-free as when you were a child? You listed so many things that were your parents' fault, not Mark's fault. Your parents were neglectful. Mark may simply have been invested in getting Brooke away from a bad family situation. You would be the bonehead. Your family is weird. You haven't listed one thing that Brooke and Mark did that's not normal. So you freaked out and failed math because your sister went out to eat? Your parents are the real boneheads. They created a toxic environment in the home. What do you think? Please let me know in the comments below. If you like these stories, please consider subscribing. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next Reddit story. In the meantime, please take care of yourself. Bye for now.